So I'm actually pretty excited about this session because it's taking a interesting twist, something that I'm fascinated with. Those of you that know me know that I study neurology. I have a fascination with neurology, specifically neuroscience and how folks make money, exploit money, spend money, and build businesses. So I wanted to share with you today some neurological gaps that happen between your prospective franchisee and you through that whole process of moving someone from looking at a business and ultimately deciding yes or no that that's a business for them. So I want to talk about two really big gaps to make you conscious of them, and also give you a couple of tips how to fill in those gaps. And then at the end of the session, I'm also going to give you a technique that is used to create a compulsion and to help create a compellingness for your prospective franchisee to get through. So as I mentioned, this whole idea of neurology and the gray matter that goes on in our head is kind of a last frontier to me. But it gives us some insight as to why folks are stopping in the mid-process, going sideways, and you're losing them. For whatever crazy reason they give you, it always comes back down to two primary gaps. I don't care if they tell you it's not, the economy isn't right just yet, or my wife isn't on board, or whatever it is that they're giving you as an excuse for disappearing, even if they bother to give you an excuse. I'm telling you, it comes back to two hormonal, neurological gaps that we as sales professionals, franchise brokers, franchise development folks are missing, and I want to bring those to light. So gap number one, fear. Fear unmanaged always equals a no. Always equals a no. This goes back to what we learned in university when we studied the Maslow theory, or the hierarchy of needs. That we can't focus on business success or falling in love or being self-actualized when our basic safety needs are not taken care of. So this is a priority to be considering this. So fear from a neurological and hormonal perspective, and bear with me, this is kind of out there, but you're going to learn a lot, creates and stimulates a cortisol release and an adrenaline release. When we have fear of any type, crossing a narrow bridge or cross a river, for example, I just experienced that myself this week, it creates a rush of adrenaline and a rush of cortisol. And if you study adrenaline and you study cortisol, you know it creates a negative neurological and physiological reaction where we become slightly irrational, if not a lot irrational. Our focus narrows on just what's going on. It isn't able to see the future. It isn't able to see what's next. It literally narrows our focus, and our sensory acuity is on the current thing that we're dealing with. So this adrenaline, when it's rushing through our brains and rushing through our body, shuts us down. And it causes us to go sideways. It causes us to make irrational decisions. It causes us to see things through a filter that is not clear and not obvious. So we can all think of those things in our lives where we have had fear and we acted in ways that made no sense. And I'm suggesting that your prospective franchisees are doing the exact same thing. Now, add on top of that, our emotions are contagious. So let's say you have a prospective franchisee that is on course, They're tracking with you through that process to discover if this business is something they can do and want to do and should do in some way. But then they go home and they talk to their wife who has fear, who has concerns about Johnny's education, who has concern about making that mortgage, who has concern about your candidate's health and how much time and energy he's going to be putting, who has concerns about the future. So the prospective franchisee, even if he or she is not experiencing fear, and certainly he or she is not articulating it and sharing it with you, even if he or she isn't, if he's surrounded by someone who is a father-in-law, a spouse, a CPA, or even what he or she is reading on the internet and in his or her newspaper that stimulates cause for fear and concern, this adrenaline and this cortisol will come up. Now, let's talk about what fear does. Fear technically has two faces. One that you're very familiar with, and that's that fight or flight kind of thing. When we're in a situation, when we're fearful about a certain situation or what could happen out in the future, we tend to leave that situation so we don't incur that particular challenge. So we leave the process of due diligence and we exit, giving you a poor excuse as to why we exit, if we even bother to give you an excuse. So the natural tendency when something you have said as a franchise development person or franchise broker stimulates fear in me, the natural consequence is for me to back away. It's not for me to say that gives me concern. Oftentimes we don't even know when fear has been stimulated. It could have been something that was read, something that was said, or a crazy picture or thought that somebody has in their head, or simply by being surrounded by others that are feeling that particular concern. Remembering if we don't have safety, we can't go to the next level, which is move down that path. But fear has another side, and that's the side that is about desiring to investigate. So think about it this way. There's a big boom in the middle of the night. It wakes you from your sleep. It scares the bejesus out of you, but what do? You don't stick your head underneath the cover, right, and hope that there's not a second boom. You will conquer the fear ever so slightly, just enough that you'll get up and investigate where that sound came from. So what we want to do with our prospective franchisee is prevent them from fleeing and or disappearing, and instead go through the fear, because we're always going to have fear of the unknown. We've never run a business before, or at least not that particular business. I'm coming from corporate America. This is different. It's going to stimulate anxiety and fear. But we as franchise professionals need to help our prospective franchisee shift from a flee to let's investigate. Let's take a look more closely at what this opportunity is, and let's see if I can do it anyway, even with this feeling of slight fear that I might be incurring. Now, I got to tell you, this is bottom line, that if someone doesn't feel safe and you're triggering fear, things that wouldn't scare you are scaring them, if they're triggering fear in any way, they're going to start to hem and haw and move a different direction. So recently we did a massive research project in tandem with Steve Olson, and those of you that know Steve Olson, he wrote the #1 selling book in franchising on franchise development called Grow to Greatness. And we researched 40 of the top franchise development guys and looked at their emotional and social intelligence markers, their values, everything about them we could possibly analyze. We analyzed, and we wanted to see if there were common denominators and discover why these guys, on average, were doing $360,000 a year in commissions and salary. Why were they doing so well? Why were they going from company to company, being able to sell brand new concepts and continue to do well? And we saw some patterns. And one of the biggest patterns was just this. They were able to make their candidates feel safe, i.e., in my language, that means they were able to raise oxytocin levels in the prospective franchisee. Now, those of you that studied science understand that oxytocin is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical that is released when we feel love, when we feel safety, when we feel trust. It's that hormone that is released when a mother bonds with a child. And what these superstar franchise development guys did well was create safety, i.e., released this chemical within their prospective franchisees. So our job to close these neurological gaps and to help people through the process of buying a franchise, we need to raise the oxytocin in them. And we do that by increasing the feelings of love, safety, and trust. And I'm going to show you in a second how to do it on purpose. Our franchise development guys were doing it simply because it is either natural or they've been taught how to do it, but bottom line, they were extra good at this particular piece. The second piece is they were able to raise dopamine levels. Now, dopamine, those of you that are familiar with dopamine, it's a hormone that if you're, let's say, playing a football game, you're out there on the football field, and you take a really hard hit and you've been injured. You cracked a rib, you fractured a toe, whatever happened. The body raises dopamine level to ease the pain, to soothe the pain, to let you get through that so you can continue to pursue your goal, to continue to pursue the winning of that game. So temporarily, that dopamine satiates and smooths out and has that pain or that fear or that concern go away for that rib, for that toe. But dopamine also works not just on physical concerns, it works on emotional, financial, psychological concerns. So if we can raise these dopamine levels, not only does it also make this candidate feel love, not that romantic, crazy love that you're probably thinking about, but the kind of love that's a brotherly love, where they know that you will do what's right and best, that you have their best interests at heart, that you are sharing things with them, moving them through a process because you care about their future and you care about them. That unconditional experience of love that has them feel comfortable with you. This is what you would have with your spouse or your children or your best friend by raising these dopamine levels. But the cool part about dopamine, not only does it make them feel safe and soothes them from any kind of fear or concern they have, but it also stimulates curiosity. This is the part where now I can go on and go to the edge of that cliff, or I can ride that roller coaster. And this is also why when you ride that roller coaster, you get a rush of dopamine, and it makes you want to do it again and again and again. So we want them to be able to step out and take a risk, do something new, do something different, but at the same time feel safe, and that we can move them through that process in a way that we care about them and they're going to get the kind of results they want. So how do we do all of that? These superstar franchise development guys, to a large degree, we're doing it intuitively, but there are ways that you can consciously and deliberately do this. First, it requires that you as a franchise development person, as a franchise broker, be authentic. Be able to be fully and totally transparent and vulnerable about your company, about yourself, about your numbers, where there's a level of absolute authenticity. There's nothing more frustrating in a conversation about somebody's future, where they're putting their future in your hands. You're taking them down a path. If they feel that you are not being honest or transparent. Here's what's kind of interesting about that. Years ago when I was a psychotherapist and I would work with clients that wanted to get through a particular issue, I discovered very quickly that most of us cover our tender underbellies. Most of us cover those things that we don't want people to see. So your candidate isn't going to tell you, I don't trust you, or I don't believe you, or I feel like you're hiding something, or I'm feeling uncomfortable, or I feel inadequate, or I don't know if I can do this. They're not going to articulate that. They're going to cover those tender underbellies, and so you have no material to help them move through that concern and through those fears and through those misconceptions or perceptions unless you first offer a level of vulnerability and authenticity. So when I was in private practice, I learned that most folks cover those tender underbellies up. And the way to get them to both feel safe and to trust and to move them through a process, I first had to show some level of vulnerability and show that I too had foibles and errors and made mistakes, and do so by being completely transparent and vulnerable. The additional thing that that does is when you are transparent and you show your tender underbelly and you show your vulnerability, both for you personally as well as the vulnerabilities of your companies or the companies that you're representing, it stimulates these hormones of oxytocin and dopamine, where your prospect begins to feel safe, that you're not hiding anything, that there are problems, as in every company, that there are issues, that not everyone does things correctly. What I found, and I'm sure you found the same, is when we look at why people are not transparent or not acting from a place of complete integrity, meaning what is in my heart and what I'm thinking and what I'm saying and how I'm acting are congruent and consistent. Anytime you're thinking one thing and speaking another, or feeling one thing and acting a different way, the other person picks it up. It's incongruent and causes some challenges. Even if it's over the phone, they can hear it in your tone of voice, in how you're skipping words. There's a million ways that they can pick it up. So I oftentimes ask, why have we become a culture that is not transparent, that's not comfortable speaking what we're thinking and what we're feeling and telling the truth? Why did we become a culture where we can't be vulnerable and not open to hearing about our prospects' tender underbellies, nor are we willing to show ours in our companies or in ourselves? Why do we puff up? And I'm sure you have 1,000 different answers for that, from a cultural perspective. And it's only gotten worse since the internet and Facebook and a million other things, where we're putting out all the success and all the great things we're doing, but we rarely talk about our concerns and our fears. So we have a prospect coming to us that can't move forward until he feels safe, nor can he share his fears of inadequacy or his concerns about his family or about his future, simply because we don't give him space to do so, nor can we. We puff up as franchisors, we puff up as brokers, pretending we're all that and a whole bunch more, when indeed we're nothing but humans running a business to the best of our abilities. And if we put that on the table, it stimulates this oxytocin and it stimulates this dopamine, where someone can say, I feel safe with this individual. I trust this individual. The kind of trust that we would experience as small children wishing to ride a bike for the first time. That's really scary, right? But we are willing to step onto the bike and get a few bumps and scrapes because dad or mom or uncle is right next to us. And we know they would not ever have us do something that we wouldn't enjoy and wouldn't be good for us or we wouldn't be successful at. That's the kind of trust we want to build, and we do so by creating transparency and having our mouths and our thoughts and our hearts speaking and acting in congruency. So don't ever compromise your authenticity for approval. Frequently, our prospective franchisee will puff up and pretend they're something because they want you to accept them and approve of them. So you don't always get the true picture of who they are simply because they're busy pretending they're something that they're not. They're exaggerating ever so slightly. And so if you take them at face value, you assume they have what's necessary. So by you and your company being transparent and authentic, it allows the franchisee to do so the same. Bring up those dopamine levels, bring up those oxytocins, and they'll tell you the truth, and you'll have a better idea if this is a candidate that's right for you. It also creates a level of empathy which reassures your candidate that they are in good hands with you through that process. It builds confidence in them, and it makes you the trusted advisor and or advocate, helping them make a wise and informed decision because you truly care about them, and anything that they share with you is safe with you, and you will make sure that this decision is right and best by them. It's the old saying from Teddy Roosevelt, nobody cares how much you know until you know how much you care. But it is neurologically proven and financially proven that when we do that, we do more deals. And I want you to do more deals, and I want you to do the right deals. So what's the return on investment? The value of trust, the value of authenticity, the value of congruity is that you have a stronger influence. Your return on influence grows exponentially. So when your candidate comes to you for an answer or has a question of some sort or is dealing with something, they know that your recommendations, your advice is given from truly caring and from being forthcoming and transparent. You have stronger influence on somebody's decisions and how fast they go, the higher the level of trust and the greater the level of safety that you can create. So our job is to raise those oxytocin levels, because low levels of oxytocin will and does create stress, fear, and anxiety. They'll pretend they're okay, but underneath something isn't quite right, and they're afraid to take the risk. So again, be the light to your candidate. They're going to be out in the world. They're going to be reading bad reviews. They're going to be talking to a franchisee that's not validating well. He's a squeaky wheel. And so he's out there hearing all this kind of inconsistencies. You need to be someone that's so transparent, so authentic, so safe that they can come back and say, here's what I heard, here's what I read, and they know that whatever you advise, your level of influence is so great that they can feel safe with you. So when that shock goes off, when they read that review or they talk to that franchisee or that CPA gives them bad advice, they can choose to listen to you, to use your influence and your advisement. So you become that safety zone for them to move them through whatever concerns they have, either externally from their own mind chatter and their own history, or internally or externally, things they read or hear or from those that they're associated with. please remember all fears are people dependent. Different people have different fears. So you may have a fear of security, or you may have a fear of not being the best, but somebody else may have a completely different fear. Our tool actually is soon going to be putting out a report or a single page that shows you exactly who your candidate is in terms of his emotional, social, relational, and financial fears. Let me give you an example. A social fear could be a candidate that you have who has a fear of being embarrassed or a fear of being perceived as inadequate, not having what it takes to be a franchisee. He's not going to articulate it, but it's operating. And if you've done a good job stimulating oxytocin and dopamine, it will bring that down and it'll allow him to be transparent, and it'll also increase his confidence where that fear isn't even stimulated. He will feel stronger simply because he is believed in and trusted. So the social fear of I'm inadequate can show up 1,000 different ways. And all you know is that prospective franchisee at some point disappears because something you said, something they read, in talking with the franchisee, they put themselves in the shoes of that franchisee, for example, and all of a sudden go, shoot, I don't have that education, I don't have that background, I don't have, that kind of money. Whatever it is, they begin to start to feel inadequate. So our job, if indeed this is a good candidate, is to soothe that social fear, and we do so by backing up and increasing oxytocin and dopamine through authenticity, transparency, safety, and security. So let's move on to gap number 2, which is conflicting values. Anytime there's a conflicting value, that equals a no. A conflicting value causes a negative psychological reaction. It is what causes us to do battle inside. So think of it in this way. If our values are everything that we are at our meaningful core, it's the most important thing to us. It's the way we make our decisions financially. It's what we choose to buy. It's what we choose to wear. It's what we choose to marry. That our values dictate every single decision that we make. So if a couple of our values internally are in conflict, or a value is in conflict between the franchisee, a prospective franchisee, and you, or they perceive there's a conflict between you. For example, you may be highly driven and you're all about growth and you're all about dominating the marketplace and you're all about results, and your candidate's values are about making a difference and having a contribution and having an impact of some sort. If they perceive your values and their values are in conflict, it stimulates a shutdown. It has them return to a place, I'm not understood, I don't fit, you don't approve of me, I don't belong, and they begin to shut down. So what we want to do is have the prospective franchisees see that their values are indeed in alignment with our franchise concept, that it indeed aligns with them and allows them to fully express who and what they are from a values perspective. Now, there's 2 things that can happen, just like with fear, with values. When there's a conflict in values, it can cause a standoff. So somebody will not move forward if they can't get their top 5 or 6 or 7 values. They literally can't move forward. So it causes a standoff. On the other hand, if they are aligned, if all of their values are aligned with you as a franchise development person and your company or the companies you are showing, then there's instant inertia and movement forward. So when it's in conflict, when 2 values are in conflict, example, my values might be family and relationship and dependability and security, And this concept that I'm looking at requires evening hours and Saturdays, which could conflict with the time with my family. So even though it's a great franchise concept, and it allows me to have some of my other values like growth and success and control, it doesn't allow me to have the other three values, relationship and family and all of those kinds of things. So those values internally will go in battle. They don't know how to resolve the issue. So it creates an emotional confusion, like, oh, shoot, I really want it, but what about this? And even though they may not be articulating, it's a feeling inside where a battle is going on. And they begin to avoid you as a franchise development individual because they, A, can't fully articulate what's in conflict, and because they can't take the next step. Look at yourself. Every time you procrastinate, and we all do, if you look at the procrastination, it will always be a conflicting value. Two values that will not allow you to do whatever this thing is that you're procrastinating on. You know, you don't want to get your taxes done. The conflicting value may be, I want charge of my own life. I don't want somebody telling me what to do. And the other is, I need to be a responsible citizen. Whatever the conflict is, it will always come down to a values conflict that has your prospective franchisee procrastinate, not get those documents back to you, avoid you, and go into a place of confusion. They're not always aware of what the conflict is. But worse, when two or more values are in conflict, it causes self-sabotage. The very thing you want, you end up losing because you're just spinning because there's two pieces that are battling it out. Now, when our values are harmonious, when they're in alignment, both with our franchise development pro that we're working with, he or she understands their values, he or she can relate to it, I can be transparent with them, I feel safe with them, and this concept that you are showing me, this franchise you're showing me, is congruent and consistent with my values, I can express them, then what you have is this feeling of action. This is right. It is a visceral feeling, trust me. In fact, many of your candidates will tell you, I got a gut feeling, this is right. They actually get a physical feeling of rightness. It's a compass that goes off, and it spurs them to take action. So when there's conflict, it causes us to procrastinate, avoid, and even sabotage ourselves. Alignment will allow us to feel right and have the energy to take action even through our fears, So what do we do about this? How do we deliberately help them to align these values and get this sense of, I want to move forward, I want to take some action? So there's another neurotransmitter called serotonin. Most of you are familiar with serotonin. It's the happy hormone, right? It's that hormone that makes you feel relaxed, it makes you feel happy. But what you may not know is it also makes you feel secure, and it makes you feel confident. So there's a few ways that you can deliberately create higher levels of serotonin, i.e. then moving them through the process. And you can do that by helping your candidate remember times where they've had success, happiness, and confidence and security. You want to ask them a lot of questions. You want to have them reveal themselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you can avoid the landmines, right? And you can also anchor and trigger the positive chemicals, in this case serotonin, so we can get them to move forward. So have them tell you about times they've taken a risk and been successful, times when they've been the happiest, times when they felt most confident and most secure, and write those in your notes. So when the time is appropriate, you can regularly trigger those emotions and those thoughts. bring those stories up on a regular basis as you're going through your presentation and you're going through that whole process of consulting with your prospective franchisee. Bring that story up and tell them how that story is similar to what they're currently doing or what they're going to be doing when they buy this franchise. So the more you can stimulate it and bring those serotonin levels up, the greater the level of action you're going to see. So again, different values, different people. So you want to keep that in mind. Our tool uncovers that. There are ways you can do that even without our tool, but obviously we want you using our tool. We always provide you the top 7 values of your prospective franchisees. So you want to stimulate those and show your prospective franchisee how these values overlap and or can be expressed in your franchise concept. So you can see 2 different candidates here. The candidate over to the right is all about team and loyalty and consistency and security and dependability and effectiveness. So what motivates him, what drives him is having those things, expressing those things. So when we're talking about our franchise concept, we're going to show him how we work and act as a team, how we've had loyal franchisees and loyal customers, and how our business is proven and is going to be around a long, long time. It's a product, it's a service that's always going to be needed. So we're going to talk about consistency and security. We're going to show him how our concept aligns with these values, if indeed this is a candidate you want. So you may not want this candidate, but and that's a different candidate than what we see over here. Here we see someone who's focused on creativity, needs to have some level of self-expression and do things uniquely and do things their own way. They're all about contribution and making a difference, and they need something that's high quality. So when we're talking to this candidate, it's different than how we're talking to the other candidate. Remember, if values are in conflict, the answer is no, and the no may not be a direct no. It may be avoidance, it may be procrastination, it may be self-sabotage, or it may be confusion. But the answer is no. So our job is to uncover those values and then show them how they can express those values in this concept. So closing the gap. Let's close the gap. And we do so by aligning, leveraging, and steering our prospective franchisee towards their highest values. We, as franchise development folks, want to be transparent, and we want to share our values. If they're different than the prospective franchisee, that's okay, as long as we are fully and completely transparent. But we also don't want to be selling from our values. We don't want to be selling from our. I'll give you an example of someone that actually was selling me on the idea of partnering on a particular type of project. And he suggested that we could, dominate the marketplace and we could edge out the competition, and we had a similar enemy and all of those things. So the values he was leveraging was competition, growth, domination, and none of those values mean anything to me. Show me how I can edify. Show me how I can contribute. Show me how I can make a difference. Show me how what I do empowers someone else and does it again and again. Now I'm in. I'm going to buy that business. I'm going to be part of that particular project. So you can have values, but it's important that you align the prospect's values with the concept, and your values take, step aside temporarily. Doesn't mean you can't be different, but they do need to step aside temporarily, and you need to acknowledge your candidates. Okay, closing up. I want to talk about a trade secret. I'm actually going to do a whole webinar on this. This is a neuro-linguistic programming technique if you studied NLP, and if not, maybe something you want to take a look into. It's called the procedural close, and it is based on how neurology works, and it's based on the syntax that the brain uses to create a compulsion to every time you pass a Starbucks to zip in and get a cup of coffee. You don't know why, you don't need it, but you zip in. Why do you do that? A compulsion to always make your bed or brush your teeth. What makes you do that? There's a syntax that the brain goes through that causes that compulsion, where you actually feel uncomfortable if you don't do it. So this is called the procedural close. It's a technique that comes from Neurolinguistics, and I'm just going to give you a big picture of it. Go do some research on it. We'll do a class on it later, but I at least wanted you to get some idea. So it looks like this. You bring your prospective franchisee to his current state. His current state is what? He's disrespected at work. He's underpaid. He's been passed over for promotion. You know, he's aging, whatever it is. You put him in his current state. And when you put him in that current state, it's an associated state. You want him to feel it. You want him to feel that disrespect, that feeling of fear and anxiety of potentially losing his job. You want him to feel it. And then you want him to see the future. But you want it in a place where it's kind of out there, 5 years out there. This is the future. Here's the future of having your values. You know, Mr. Prospect, you know, step out into the future for a moment, running your own business. Let's see what your life is like there. You're able to close those doors and go home and spend some time with your wife and children. You have repeat customers that you've built friendships with. You're growing month over month. Your son is able to come into the business when he's out of college. So you're leveraging, those are the values of that prospective franchisee. Again, those values could be different for someone else. So you show them the future, but it's in the distance. It's out there. It's, you know, arm's length kind of thing. And then you drop them into that. So what would your wife be saying? Or what would the guys at the country club be saying? Or how would that make you feel? Or is there anything else that I didn't address? You're actually going to have them step into that future and feel it. Feel what it feels like to have that coffee. Feel what it feels like to own that business. Feel like what it feels like and sound like to be able to go to the country club and talk to your buddies while you're doing a round of golf about your business. What does that sound like? What does it feel like? So you want them to feel it for a second, and then you want them to look back. Okay, John, or prospective franchisee, I want to help you get there. But there's a lot of steps before we can get there, okay? We're going to need to do A, B, and C. We need to ask. We're going to ask you to do this confidential assessment or fill out the request for consideration. And then we need to do this, and then we need to do this, and then we need to do this. So you want to have them feel it in the future, and then you need to tell them, you can't have it. You can't have it until you go through these steps. Now, if done properly, and we'll dig more deeply into this down the road, this will create a compulsion to go forward. So the key is, once you have them look back and see the steps, which are highlighted there with those green dots, then you want them to actually take the first step. Whatever your process is, have them take the first step. So John, the first step is a step you're taking right now in the conversation we're having, where we're getting you financially qualified, or you filled out that request for consideration, or you've taken that assessment, or whatever your process is, you want him to take that first step and then regularly remind him about the future. So Aubrey, I'm actually going to have you field any questions or comments. And as you're gathering your thoughts there, I wanted to make available to you, if you are interested, the white paper on the top 8 traits of franchise sales professional. There were actually more than 8, but we wrote a small paper on those 8 traits. So reach out to Aubrey, and she'll get you a copy of that so you can also see, do you have those traits, some of which we talked about today: transparency, authenticity, great relationship management skills. I want you to know that our top franchise development guys did not score particularly higher in sales skills or even marketing skills. They scored higher in transparency, authenticity, and relationship management. that's where they did a better job. So you don't have to be a phenomenal salesperson, but you do have to create safety, and we've given you some tools, and you do have to be able to align somebody's values so they can say yes. So Aubrey, do we have some questions that we need to field?
We do. And the requests are coming in for the top 8 traits. So Shannon, Karen, Jeff, and everybody else, I will get you those today.